Welcome back, Creepaholics crew. Today's story takes us back to the early 1950s, a time when the most daring and meticulous heist in American history took place. The Great Brinks robbery. Imagine $2.7 million stolen without a trace. A perfect plan, executed that is baffling law enforcement for years. This case involves deception, betrayal, and a heist so infamous that it shook the nation. So let's creep into it, shall we? Grab those flashlights, lock those doors tight, and let's creep on down the dark and airy trail together. It all began in the early 1947 when Joseph Specs O'Keefe and Stanley Gus Garcio, two well-known career criminals in the Boston area, began contemplating a massive heist. They wanted to pull off a robbery so big that it would set them up for life. The target? None other than the Brinks Armored Car Depot in Boston, Massachusetts. This facility was a fortress, holding vast amounts of cash, checks, securities, and other valuables of the city's biggest banks and businesses. The plan took years to develop. Over time, O'Keefe and Garcia brought in other members they trusted, eventually creating a gang of 11 skilled thieves. This wasn't just any group of criminals. Each had a specific role in what was becoming a highly complex and well-orchestrated crime. They conducted multiple dry runs for nearly 2 years. They studied the Brinks Depot, observing every detail from the layout of the building to the schedules of the guards, the timing of the delivery trucks, and every moments of the employees and movements that they make. They knew when the vault was unlocked, where the money was kept, and how to bypass the security system by the end of 1949. The gang was ready. On January 17, 1950, the gang dressed in navy blue clothing and Halloween masks and made their move. At 6:55 p.m., the gang entered the Brinks Depot through a side door that they had managed to unlock. They were equipped with guns, ropes, and bags, and moved swiftly through the depot. Once inside, they encountered 5 Brinks employees prepared for the end-of-the-day money processing. The gang overpowered the employees and tied them all up, all without firing a single shot. They all knew the layout so well that they moved like clockwork, heading straight for the money room. There, they filled bags with cash, checks, and securities, amounting to the total of $2.7 million, which would be worth over $30 million in today's money. The Brinks trucks that had just completed delivery earlier that evening was untouched. The thieves were there strictly for the cash and bonds inside the building. Within just 30 minutes, they were in and out, leaving no clues behind the whole operation. It was eerily quiet, organized, and professional. The discovery of robbery caused an uproar. It was the largest cash robbery in the history of the United States at the time. The FBI and the local law enforcement launched one of the most intense investigations in history, but they quickly found themselves at a loss. The robbers had left almost no trace, no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no evidence. The gang had been careful not to leave any physical proof, and the use of Halloween masks had prevented anyone from identifying them. The media dubbed it the crime of the century, and the city of Boston was grappled by fear and fascination. How could such a massive heist take place and no one knew who did it? For 6 years, the gangs lived in a relatively peaceful setting. They had split the money and bonds amongst themselves, with most of them living quiet, low-profile lives. However, as with most criminal enterprises, things began to unravel from within. Joseph Specs O'Keefe and Stanley Garcia, the original masterminds, felt they weren't getting the fair share of the loot. O'Keefe in particular became frustrated with the way the money was divided. He started demanding more and threatening his fellow gang members that he would go to the authorities if they didn't comply. This set off a chain of events that would eventually lead to the gang's downfall. In 1954, O'Keefe was arrested on a separate charge, and when he realized that his fellow gang members weren't going to help him with the bail or legal fees, he decided to turn on them. He began cooperating with the FBI, and his testimony became the key to unraveling the entire Brinks heist. Once O'Keefe began talking, it wasn't long before the rest of the gang identified and were arrested. Between 1955 and 1966, almost all of the original 11 men involved in the heist were taken into custody. The trial was a media sensation, with each gang member trying to pin the blame on each other. But in the end, they were all convicted and sentenced to long prison terms. Surprisingly, almost none of the money was recovered. Out of the 2.7 million stolen, only about 58,000 was found. The rest of the cash and bonds had either been laundered or spent over the years, disappearing into the underworld of organized crime. Convicted of the Brinks robberies served their sentences in various prisons across the United States. Joseph O'Keefe, the man who initially broke the silence, was given a reduced sentence for his cooperation, but still served significant time behind bars. The others, including ringleaders Tony Pino and Stanley Garcia, received life sentences. O'Keefe, once released, lived the rest of his life in relatively obscurity. Gang members remained in jail until they died. It was a bitter end to what had initially been hailed a flawless heist. The gang had pulled off one of the most daring crimes in U.S. history, ultimately falling apart due to greed, betrayal, and bad luck. The 1950 Brinks robbery remains one of the most famous heists in American history. Its influences on pop culture can't be overstated. Movies, TV shows, and books have all been inspired by the infamous crime. But more than that, it serves as a reminder of the old saying, crime doesn't pay no matter how meticulous a crime is planned. It's often the human element, greed, distrust, and betrayal that led to its downfall. Before we wrap this up, I'd like to remind the listeners to help us support Creepaholics going strong. You can support the show with a monthly donation of just 99 cents or $4.99 a month. Every contribution helps us continue sharing these stories of crime, mystery, and the downright eerie. Click the support link wherever you listen and join the Creepaholics crew in keeping these cases alive. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Creepaholics so you never miss a story of crime, mystery, or the downright eerie. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, keep your hearts open and your minds alert. Don't stop shining your light in the shadows. Remember, keep creeping it real, Creepaholics crew.